Greetings, I'm the man behind the mask, and I'd like to talk to you about hockey. Yes, let's talk about hockey, the show that journeys through the history of the sport of ice hockey from its disputed origins to the game we see today. Nowadays, with it being nearly 20 years since a Canadian team has managed to win the Stanley Cup, it seems as though the U.S. has a pretty firm hold on the treasured chalice. But this wasn't always the case. The original mandate of the Cup was to only recognize the top hockey club in Canada. But a few years before the arrival of the 1920s, all of that would change.
Back in 1915, with the construction of a new indoor artificial ice rink in Seattle, Washington, the PCHA expanded their league to include a fourth team that would be based in Seattle and named them the Metropolitans. But around that same time, relations between the PCHA and their eastern rival league, the NHA, had turned sour, with the higher-ups of the PCHA accusing the NHA of going back on their agreements to allow the PCHA to draft 3 players on a rotating basis from among the NHA teams. So, as a retaliatory measure against the NHA, the PCHA would conduct a player raid of the Toronto Blue Shirts Club and acquire 4 players to form the core of the new Seattle team, including future Hall of Famers Jack Walker and Harry Holmes. And so the Seattle Metropolitans hit the ice for the first time in the 1915-1916 season, earning their club's first ever win in their inaugural game when they beat the Victoria Aristocrats 3-2. Seattle would finish with a respectable 9-9 record their first year, tying Vancouver for second place in the league. And with their 7-3 home record, the Metropolitans drew good crowds all year as the people of Seattle took to hockey. However, in just their second year, Seattle, led by Bernie Morris and Frank Foyston, would nearly double their number of victories, and with a win over Portland in the final game of the season, clinched the PCHA League Championship with a 16-8 record. This title also gave the Metropolitans the right to challenge the champion from the NHA for the Stanley Cup. In this best-of-5 series, they faced the defending champions, the Montreal Canadiens. The first puck for this matchup was dropped on March 17, 1917, and Montreal showed no signs of wear from their long trip out west as they surprised the Metropolitans with a decisive 8-4 win in Game 1. Seattle, though, would bounce back with 2 wins of their own, as goaltender Harry Holmes limited Montreal to just 2 goals over those 2 games, while the Metropolitans' offense exploded with 6 goals in Game 2 and 4 in Game 3. With their home team up in the series, Game 4 on March 26th was played before a standing-room-only crowd at the Seattle Arena. Once the Metropolitans got on the board in this game, they never looked back, scoring goal after goal as they crushed the Canadiens 9-1 to become the first-ever American-based team to win the Stanley Cup, forever changing the Cup's mandate.
There was just one problem, though. The Canadiens had neglected to bring the Cup out west with them. So, not only was there no Cup to present to the Metropolitans after their win, but it would end up being months before the Seattle players got to even see the illustrious trophy.
Following this, the Metropolitans would win the PCHA League title and challenge for the Stanley Cup 2 more times. Once in 1919, though the series would be left undecided due to the Montreal Canadiens being ravaged by the Spanish flu pandemic and Seattle refusing to take the Cup by forfeit. Then they would play for the Cup one more time in 1920, where they lost to the Ottawa Senators in 5 games. Additionally, When the PCHA started holding a playoff series for the league title in 1918, Seattle would play in this series in every year except for one, before falling attendance made the Seattle owners decide against renewing the team's lease in the summer of 1924. Thus ending not only the Metropolitans franchise, but also the PCHA itself, as the league couldn't survive with only 2 teams. And though, since that time, 14 different American-based teams have won the Cup on 44 separate occasions, the first team to ever bring Lord Stanley's Cup south of the Canadian border will always be the 1917 Seattle Metropolitans.